This is a last minute update on what's going to be a massive severe weather event today. We've actually seen our tornado risk up in the Midwest upgraded to a SIG 2 moderate risk. This is the first time this has ever been issued. And this not only means we're going to see potentially strong tornadoes, but also tornadoes that have the potential to produce violent winds or violent intensity. And we also have seen our 5% SIG 1 risk really extended all the way from Texas all the way up to southern Michigan. That's also been another development. Another thing is going to be hail. Our hail risk has also been upgraded. That SIG 1 has pretty much been stretched out all the way throughout our risk, sort of like our tornado risk, but we're seeing the first ever SIG 2 moderate risk. And this is for potentially some 4-inch in diameter hail. We've also seen that hail risk up here in the Midwest potentially upgraded a little bit, and this would be for anywhere from 2 to 3.5-inch hail. So some serious stuff on that. For our wind risk, it's looking pretty much the same. This is really the only one that hasn't changed, with those highest wind probabilities being with that damaging and very powerful line that we're expecting down in Texas, potentially seen up to wind gust of 75 miles an hour. So this is what it looks like right now on satellite, and immediately we can already see what looks like a couple of storms, or at least a cumulus field down here in parts of southwestern Texas. And this is really coinciding perfectly with when our 500 millibar jet is coming through. I think there's no question about whether these storms are going to get going. And then another thing, up here in the Midwest, our warm front has sagged a little bit more south, but as our 700 millibar jet is currently overspreading the region right now, which is no longer capped, that was really the big question. Will it be overcoming the capping? Will we have storms? Well, now we have a massive cumulus field in this uncapped region. I don't really think it's much of a question anymore of if we're going to see strong, powerful storms out in the Midwest. So we're going to start down here on the SPC meso analysis for our Texas area. First thing we're going to look at are dew points, and immediately we're seeing some really juiced up dew points, pretty much 70 dew points across the board until you get to our dry line, which has actually sharpened up quite a bit. Now, yesterday, there were some concerns about how sharp the dry line would be and if that would play a role. Well, we don't even really have to think about that anymore because our dry line has sharpened up loads, 70 dew points all the way through, and high 70s to 80 degrees. What's going to be our main region? It looks like our morning convection and clouds really haven't played that big of a role. If I go back to the satellite, you'll be able to see that they've cleared out quite a bit. And if I go back to the meso analysis, you'll be able to see that they haven't done that much damage to the environment. It looks like as we go through the day, our moisture is going to actually continue creeping westward into our storms, and that would make them pretty favorable to start producing those hazards pretty much all the way through the line, roughly in probably about 3 hours from when this video is uploaded. So that would be around 6 p.m. Central. And then our jet analysis, we can see kind of coinciding with what looks like those storms coming up on satellite. Our strongest area of our 500 millibar jet is just starting to overspread the region now. I think storm initiation is pretty much imminent at this point. And then also look at all of this strong 500 millibar flow. That's going to be vital in that massive hail risk today. Also vital is going to be our instability. Things are getting very unstable out here, anywhere between 3,000 to 2,000 joules per kilogram. And what's really going to end up being a really favorable sector for storms. It looks like this cape is pretty much going to stay put. So until these storms can move eastward enough around 6 p.m., they can't really access this enough. That is one thing, though. It does look like these storms are going to initiate a bit more westward than expected. So it might take them some time to grow upscale and really produce those strongest effects. Last thing we're going to look at is our bulk shear, and you can see this is the effective bulk shear. 40 would be great for supercells. Out here, we're seeing anywhere between 70 to 60 across our entire region, and that is why 4-inch in diameter hail is going to be possible today. Now we're going to move up to the Midwest. First things first is going to be this low pressure system. Hasn't deepened down as much as the models thought, but that's not going to be a deal breaker whatsoever. But our warm front, however, you can kind of see these kinks right here, has sagged quite a bit more south than originally thought. Luckily, it's going to sag south of the Chicago metro. So Chicago appears that it's going to be spared right now from the strongest of severe weather. But other than that, that could potentially mean we see quite a few more storms north of the line, or at least what's going to be expected to be some discrete convection out here. And at that point, those would be elevated damaging wind and hail producers, mostly hail producers at that point as well. Definitely with the model guidance, though, it looks like we're going to get a couple of discrete cells kind of attached or right south of the warm front. And that is why there is that SIG 2 moderate risk out there today. Looking at our 700 millibar analysis, we can see that our shortwave is currently overspreading the region right now as we speak. It's taken a little bit more tilt than originally thought, which means that there's going to be probably a little bit more forcing there. And then also on top of that, this region is not capped whatsoever anymore. I think we're definitely going to have storms out here. Will they be south of the warm front or north of the warm front? It's still kind of hard to tell, which is kind of crazy when we're pretty much about minutes to an hour away from storm initiation. I definitely do think there's a high probability of a couple of discrete cells going off just south of this line, though. And I definitely do think we will see quite a bit of convection north producing some hail up here. Last couple of things we're going to look at is going to be our Cape. This area has destabilized loads in front of the low pressure system, and it's only going to continue to destabilize. In the most favorable area right now, we're seeing anywhere between 2,000 to 2,500 Cape. And as we go into the future, it looks like that's only going to improve. We might see widespread 2,500 to 3,000 Cape at some point eventually. And then also it looks like our warm front could move a little bit north. And actually the SPC website or mesoanalysis is not showing that many storms south of the boundary. So that's going to kind of be the only factor where we could see this situation kind of bust. But I definitely think there's going to be a solid chance that we do get a couple just south of that. Last thing we're looking at, bulk shear. It's absurd. Anywhere between 55 to 60 to even 50, which is still super favorable for very organized storms out here over our main risk area. Definitely think the ingredients are currently in place. Now, the only thing which is going to increase as we go on is going to be our low level shear. So we'll look at a couple of the convective allowing models and see what they think about that on their generated weather soundings. So now we're going to move on to the HRRR. This is the 18Z run, and we're seeing pretty much exactly what we thought we were going to see. Strong line initiates right out here in not very long, maybe only an hour from when this video is uploaded, and it's definitely going to have the potential to produce some tornadoes within it. If we do see a tail end Charlie situation like this, that cell would have the greatest chance to produce tornadoes. No guarantee though. I think what we can guarantee is that there is going to be a strong, powerful line moving east across Texas though. Something that this model is kind of picking up on is that we see some redevelopment behind the line in the later hours of the day. This might be HRRR specific. It does kind of like to spin things up on a little bit of a outflow regime. However, I definitely do think this wouldn't be completely out of the cards. And if we did see this, it probably would be fairly limited because we would have just had a strong line move through. Definitely the southern parts near Mexico could have a chance to produce all of those hazards. So that's big hail, damaging winds, and tornadoes. But it's really going to factor in if it kind of initiates a little bit more behind the line or south the line, or if we even get this at all. This is kind of a HRRR specific thing at the moment. The NAM isn't producing it, and the NAM is honestly my favorite solution for today. We also are going to see some storms as we go into the later hours as our trough kind of collides, I guess you'd say, with a cold front that's going to be pushing southward up here in parts of Kansas, Missouri. Those storms are probably only going to be a hail and wind threat as long as they stay elevated until they get to a region of southeastern Kansas where there's a little bit better moisture. Then that's when that tornado threat could potentially start to upkick. But finally, the area you've been waiting for, the Midwest. What do we got going here? Looks like we're going to get storms very soon. A couple right along the warm front. Will they stay on it? Still not super sure on that. If they go north of it, they're going to move upscale pretty quickly into just clusters. If they stay south of it, like potentially this one, that's when you get the potential for those long track damaging tornadoes. So definitely a chance still, but it's kind of crazy that we still have questions. Now we're going to be moving on to our generated weather soundings. This is from the South or just general Texas area. And immediately, this is going to be a hail and damaging wind set. Primarily, you have the ingredients in place, loads of cape, insane mixed layer cape, no capping at all, big lapse rates all the way up through this. We're seeing probably 7.5 Celsius decreasing per kilometer and anywhere between 150 and 203 cape. And then shear that could potentially be supportive of a couple of spin up tornadoes. We do have a little baby curvature in the photograph, and of course, that beautiful elongation out. And that's why we're seeing around 70 knots of effective shear. That's probably the primary reason, or it is the primary reason, why there is a potential for 4-inch in diameter hail. We're also seeing 65 dew points, and these storms are likely going to be surface based. Right now, I definitely think all hazards are going to be played. Definitely mostly a damaging wind and hail threat. But as we go later into the afternoon, that spin up tornado threat does look like it's going to ramp up, and that's just going to be isolated in a couple of areas within that line. Now moving up to the Midwest, and this is kind of the sounding you look for damaging winds and mostly strong tornadoes. We're seeing a lot of things here. We're seeing Cape, which is going to be really solid, nearing 3,000. 3 Cape around 150. That's really good for tornadoes. These storms are going to be surface based. Winds turning, accelerating with high dew points in the high 60s. Not much capping here, like I said earlier. Also, way more mixed layer cape than you normally see this time of year out here. This is a reason why large hail is still possible. Up here, potentially up to 3 inches in diameter. Our effective shear, these storms are absolutely going to be able to stay organized. We're seeing around 50 to 60 knots of that. And then our lapse rates all the way up, kind of same situation as Texas, 7.5 Celsius decreasing per kilometer. And in this environment, this is a environment where we definitely could see low level SRH nearing 400 and low level shear around 40 knots. And this photograph is fairly curved, not a low to crosswise vorticity in here, then a nice elongation out. And the final thing to point out are these parameters down here. We see a supercell parameter of 26, but what I really want to focus on is that significant tornado parameter of anywhere between 7 to 8. That could be possible. Definitely think strong tornadoes are going to be in play, if not likely. And then we have big hail and damaging winds to accompany it. Really, it's all going to matter if these storms stay south or north or attached to the warm front. And currently it looks like they're trending a little bit north of the warm front, but I definitely still think there's going to be potential for that one supercell that stays south of it and produces those big time hazards.